Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for hanging in there. I know it's been a long day. We are really delighted that you were able to join us today. We're hoping that you work with us and have some good discussions today, and we'll be able to talk about what we think are some really important publications that just came out. Before I get started, I just want folks to introduce themselves. I'll start. I'm Rachel Singer, Senior Fellow at Achieving the Dream.
Hi, I'm David Endicott, Dean of Arts, Humanities, Social Sciences, and Transitional Studies at Tacoma Community College, Tacoma, Washington.
I'm Lucy Michael. I teach mathematics at El Paso Community College.
And I'm Becky Amon. I am Dean of Developmental Education at Zane State College in Zanesville, Ohio.
And Abby Parcell. Okay. So as a way of ending this wonderful day that had lots of great concurrent sessions, but also had embedded in a College Readiness Institute, we want to bring together some of the day's learning, and so we would like to share with you, hot off the presses, right from the start, the new publications. You'll see them on your table. They're in plastic covers, and so there are, everything in that packet is for you. There are four documents. I think 4 documents in there. The briefs highlight how 7 Achieving the Dream colleges implemented developmental education reform on their campuses and are working to build an environment that recognizes and understands the diverse learning needs of developmental education students. It also emphasizes teaching and learning and how to build whole college solutions. These briefs talk about the reality of the situations that colleges face every single day, as you all know, as you experience on your campuses, and how they worked very intentionally and very deliberately to move through challenges for greater student success. And we do believe that what's important in these lessons is the process of that work. So I'm going to start by just describing some of the work that these good folks have done over the last few years, and then we'll be able to get into some work for you to do. So I'm going to start with Zane State and their Quick Start program. Quick Start is a hybrid program that combines cultural and social supports, computer literacy, and academic skill building. It significantly improved academic outcomes among the college's most challenged students, including last-minute registrants who display, as we all know, little knowledge of college culture and difficulty understanding the routine of college life and what colleges require of students. Quick Start students meet twice weekly in small classes, usually 10 to 12 students, with an instructor who helps orient them to campus routine and processes. The students get assistance with FAFSA preparation and their financial aid application and receive a student ID card and an email account. Students learn how to use Blackboard in Quick Start and the basic Microsoft application suite, and how to navigate the student services area on the Zane College website. They get basic advice on career planning and develop personal connections with faculty, staff, and their peers. To complete the course successfully, students must solve basic math, computation problems involving whole number operations, fractions, percentages, decimals, ratios, and proportions. They must also demonstrate knowledge of the writing process by crafting a cogent 5-paragraph essay. A lot of work. Members of the college's developmental education faculty join the class regularly for math and English instruction. All of this developmental instruction is aimed at preparing students for Quick Start's final step, which is taking the college's AccuPlacer exam. Quick Start combines critical academic work with valuable college survival information, as you've heard, delivered in a structured setting by a caring, involved instructor. All of this happens, and this is the good part, before students pay any tuition or even officially enroll at the institution. And so, because Quick Start is a free pre-enrollment program, it lowers the stakes for adult learners, easing their concerns about failure. Students who choose to be involved in Quick Start do it in kind of a low-stakes way. And so failure does not have dramatic consequences as it does when you're enrolled in the college. And if they choose to leave the program, they do so without incurring any debt, using any financial aid, or even creating an official student record, which is, as you know, creates a better, easier atmosphere for most students. However, for the 56% of students who do complete Quick Start, the rewards are significant. In addition to solid preparation for the placement test and a greater familiarity with campus life, those who complete the course earn 3 college credits. That means they hit the ground running upon entering college officially. Next is Tacoma Community College. I'll give you a briefing on that as well, on their contextualization and developmental English redesign.
So, excuse me, the first one is Zanesville,
Zane State is here. Yeah, they'll be talking later, and
but that was who you just...
that was Zane. Yes, that's okay. Tacoma Community College. To improve the rates of students successfully completing developmental English and moving into transfer level courses, Tacoma Community College redesigned its developmental English course sequence in 2011. The former sequence, which had 3 levels of both reading and English, that would be 6 courses in total, was compressed into a variable credit 2-course sequence, which they call English 85 and English 95. This integrates reading and writing skills, and for students testing at the lowest levels, the former sequence was 30 credits in total, and the new model totaled 16 to 20 credits. To accompany the redesign, Tacoma Community College faculty participated in substantial professional development to rethink pedagogical approaches for pre-college students within the new course structure. Tacoma's redesign was informed by Washington's renowned adult education program, IBEST, Integrated Basic Education and Skills Training, which included a particularly intensive form of contextualization. Classroom teams of developmental education instructors and professional technical instructors co-developed an integrated curriculum of pre-college and vocational skills training. While Tacoma's developmental English redesign does not involve technical instructors, the principles of contextualization and making explicit connections between classroom learning and student experience are central to the pedagogical approach of the college. And you'll hear more from Tacoma's representative shortly. And last is El Paso Math Emporium. When students enroll at El Paso, they are assessed and placed in developmental or transfer level courses in math, reading, and writing, based on their performance on the Texas Success Initiative Assessment, or TSI. Students who test into any of the developmental math courses have the option of enrolling in traditional 16-week lecture course or a Math Emporium section. The Emporium model at El Paso derives from the work of the National Center for Academic Transformation. The term Emporium designates a lab-based course in which all instruction is computer-based. With support from tutors and full-time instructors, students in the same lab may be working on different courses. At El Paso, Emporium and lecture courses cover the same material in the same sequence. Emporium developmental math sequence is as follows. Math 0301, which is college prep, introduces basic math and real number skills. Math 0303 is introductory algebra, and it introduces basics in linear equations and systems, functions and factoring. And Math 0305, intermediate algebra, extends the study of beginning algebra. While students have the option to complete all 3 developmental math courses in one semester, they register for one course. the one determined by their placement score. Classes meet 2 days a week for 80 minutes per day and are led by an El Paso math faculty member, a full-time person, or an adjunct, who is supported by 1 or 2 student tutors, depending on the class size. Emporium courses are taught in computer labs with no more than 30 students. El Paso strives to maintain a 12-to-1 student ratio, a teacher-tutor ratio in Emporium sections. The Emporium courses use MyLab Plus, a Pearson product. Students pay $150 for material fee for the course, which grants them access to all of the online content and support. While faculty have the option of leading mini lectures with the entire class or organizing small group work, students generally progress through the course module at their own pace, taking pre- and post-tests. They view videos and prepared slideshows, completing homework in the computer lab, online, off campus if they wish. The college offers open lab hours and are staffed by tutors. Students who maintain a portfolio-like course notebook with weekly progress updates and copies of completed homework assignments and tests. And if I remember correctly, El Paso bought a building, and it's called the Emporium Building, is that correct? At one of the campuses. So they really have been all in and invested a lot in Emporium. Students take many different paths depending on how many developmental courses they are required to complete before advancing to transfer level study. In the Emporium section, students can complete 1, 2, or 3 courses within a 16-week semester. They may finish one and begin the second, or they may not complete a course, but may make significant progress. If they don't finish a course, their work is saved so that when they go back, they can start where they left off when they enroll in the following semester. At the end of the semester, students receive credit for the highest level they've completed. For example, if a student is placed into college prep math and thus has to complete the entire sequence and completes both college prep and introductory algebra in one semester, they are retroactively dropped without penalty from college prep and assigned a grade for the intro algebra. If students do not complete a course but are making adequate progress at the end of the semester as determined by test and homework, they take a grade at the semester end if necessary for financial aid eligibility, or take an incomplete the following semester. When they complete the course, the transcript is updated so they stay current with the students. Okay, I hope that gives you a general idea about all 3 initiatives at the colleges. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Abby Parcell, and she's going to introduce some of the adaption modality.
Thanks. All right. So Rachel just gave you a great overview of the 3 of the colleges that are featured in the briefs. And there are some additional colleges that are included on a smaller scale, a little less detail, to give you a sense of how some similar reforms were carried out at different colleges. We used a particular framework that was just recently developed by the Community College Research Center to organize the briefs, which is called the Adoption and Adaptation Framework. And there is a citation for the report in the brief, so if you're interested in digging into that a little deeper. I saw yesterday, I think on the ATD Dream Twitter feed, a comment from one of the sessions about that said wholesale adoption of a best practice may not be a best practice, which I think the idea being that just pulling something that's worked at another institution and trying to do exactly the same thing at your institution doesn't always work. And we wanted to show with these practitioner briefs the institutional side of reform, the how and why did something take hold, and what changed at the institution for faculty, for administration, for students. And the CCRC framework was a really well-suited to that process. They developed it as part of their Scaling Innovation initiative, which involved a significant amount of field work looking at reforms across the country, and looked at what was happening in all of those and how colleges were implementing. And what they learned was that regardless of sort of student outcomes and what particular program or intervention was generating positive outcomes for students, that there were implementation issues that got in the way, and that in many cases colleges undermined their own potential benefits, and then didn't really have a way to deal with or to counteract those weaknesses that might come in their approach to implementation. So they identified 6 factors in the process of implementation, which if you look on page 13, sorry, of the purple book, which is the one I had when I was making my notes last night, but this graphic appears in all 4 pieces. It lays out adoption and adaptation. So in each of these phases, there are a couple of stages. Diagnosis, selection, and preparation are part of the adoption phase. So the idea of looking at what do your particular students need, what is the barrier that they're coming up against in diagnosis. Selection is based on that problem, what is a good, a promising practice either here at our institution or somewhere else that really responds in a rational way to that particular problem that we see. And then how do we prepare our institution with the right kind of training or policy, professional development, those kinds of things, to adopt, to bring that here. And then once you've adopted it and chosen this is what we're going to do, then begins the process of adapting that to the particular culture of the institution. So that is a matter of assessment, seeing how, paying attention to the implementation process, refining then based on what you learned during implementation, and then finally scaling, really institutionalizing it so those practices just become part of the way the institution works. And though for the sake of the narrative, we talk about each of those phases in order in the practitioner briefs, it really is a recursive process. It's not a matter of finishing diagnosis and then moving on to selection. A lot of them, the reason we sort of displayed it as a toolbox is that those are all things that are available and ought to be used during an implementation process. And so some of them you may be using at the same time. You may find yourselves returning to diagnosis to learn a little bit more, or spending time in that assessment and refinement cycle of improvement as you are working out how you want the program to work before you really scale it up, those kinds of things. So it's been useful, I think, in our description of these programs, and we also found that it was generated some really thoughtful and reflective conversations on the campuses when we went to talk with them, and sort of revealed things that the colleges didn't really even know they had done when they started to think about it in that framework. So we're hoping that the conversation we have here today might help you take some of the same framework and apply it to some of your work that you've already done on your campus, and to think how you might design and approach implementation of something that's just getting underway. And we wanted to give you a chance to do that, actually. So we planned just a brief little scenario here for you to examine and discuss at your tables before we hear from our panel. So let's see if I can make this happen. Okay. So here's your scenario. And we're going to focus on the adoption phase. So thinking in terms of diagnosis, selection, and preparation. Here's your scenario. This is a suburban campus with an enrollment just over 9,000 students at 3 different campuses. The college has a strong articulation agreement with a local 4-year, and 75% of the students attend part-time. A significant portion, almost 2/3, are Pell Grant recipients, but only 16% of the entering cohort test college ready in all subjects. Right now, the college has 3 levels of developmental math before the first transfer level course, and placement rates for this college are as follows. 18% are just one level below, 15% test into the college ready, or the second level, and 17 fall 3 levels below. The college has dug in a little deeper on rates for those students and found that for those that are testing 3 levels below, only 6% are making it through the entire sequence in 2 years. So if that's your starting point, and you're thinking about how you might approach reform, looking for what to do next, we want you to think at your tables about these things. Which students need the most support? And then what kind of interventions might support this group? Maybe it's something you've heard about while you've been here. If you don't know, where would you go to get that information? How would you evaluate it and the fit for your particular college? And then finally, preparation. What would you need to do? Policy changes, professional development, and are you finally missing any information? And of course, I know you'll all, being Achieving the Dream colleges, will definitely want some additional information, but to really make these calls. But we'd like you to take just a few minutes at your table to kind of think through, and you might look again at that, at the framework graphic, to kind of think through those different steps and talk about where you might start and what those figures lead you to think about what might be the best point of intervention for your developmental ed students.
Are you with Marsh School or maybe? Marsh. Oh, okay. You do a lot of traveling too?
Not so much.
My brother does.
No, your brother? Yeah, I go to Miami, Ohio.
Oh, but you in the States?
Yeah. I'm unlucky.
I know how you feel.
I'll get through it. And a great dinner. I always get food to come out.
I guess we do. That's why I like taking breaks. It's just like, prior to this, I took it for 25 years. Always, I don't even pick one. And then that's the problem when I get home. I leave. I don't have time to work out. I know, I got you. I'm up there now. I'm going to be 48.
In case you forgot the questions, we wrote them out.
Just a minute, I'll be right back.
Okay, we're gonna bring you back together now that you've solved the problem. And we'd just like to hear from a couple of groups how you tackled these questions. And Meredith has the mic here, so she's gonna help us out. Let's hear from someone, so what you thought about which students needed the most support and what interventions might be helpful. Does anybody want to share what they discussed? All right, thanks, Ruth. I can always count on Ruth.
You what? You
I
can
can
count on
always
me? Okay, well, we went with the lowest level, placing 3 levels below, and also because only 4% of them, were successful. And we started with a diagnosis phase that we said, well, what are some of the factors going on? They could be part-time, which also slows their progress. There could be misplacement, and then their response to where they're placed. They could be older students who have been out of math a pretty long time and haven't used it, so have no skills beyond the basic multiplication, addition, subtraction. They could have math anxiety, and they could lack any connection to the value of math. And also, because most of us are open access institutions, they also could have been in special ed in high school. And so those are all of the possibilities for them. And then we looked at institutional barriers that for making change could be faculty don't want to revise the curriculum, or in terms of the modality, the structure, and the content, and lack of funds to make something happen. So with that in mind, we said some things that we would promote would be a more contextualized curriculum, especially at that lowest level, if they really feel disengaged from math, to create something like an IBEST or a NIBEST model that would show them the value of math for where they might want to go in their curriculum. And if possible, in that situation, also create some accelerated motion for some of them to get out. But we can't forget that some of them could be advised to take a pathway that would still lead them to be a productive member of society, but perhaps going the college route might not be appropriate. So then we would pilot this, collect data, and move forward. And then really important to get the counselors on board, because otherwise it doesn't happen.
Did anyone else take a different track or approach it from a different point that you want to share? It's 4 o'clock. It's Wednesday. Oh, we've got one here. Great. Thank you. Yes.
I was a lone wolf over here by myself.
Okay.
I actually was, considering that second group only
Okay.
because they seemed there was no persistence information in. And I think there's just going to be standard attrition in a group. And if you look at the 3 numbers, you got 37% of the students that are still moving forward. Mm-hmm. We talked about accelerated learning models for that second model, or accelerated learning period, which would raise all 3.
Okay.
But I think that there's a standard attrition model when you're looking at retention numbers, and I think that 4% you can count on it, and I think you work with that level too to continue pace with students moving forward in college.
Okay.
But again, I was lone.
You want the persistence of all right. Very good. All right. Well, we just wanted to take a few minutes to have you guys think through what this might look like on your campus or a campus. But now I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel and to our panelists to tell you a little bit more about what's in each of the briefs and what they learned applying this to their institutions.
Thanks, Abby. So I think let's get to know the panelists, and let's get to know what they did and how it worked and how they were able to introduce their strategies on their campuses. So if you'd each please say your name again and just briefly give us a description of what your role was in this intervention.
Again, I'm David Endicott. I'm Dean of Arts, Humanities, Social Sciences, and Transitional Studies. And when the economy was bad, I also had custodial services assigned to me. My role, I'm a dean, so my role was the biggest, of course, in this. The idea came from me. I did all of the implementation class by class. Actually, I'm pleased that it was just the opposite. I don't know how I am setting up here, because my associate dean should be. She was kind of the force behind it. And I have to break norms. I'm going to introduce someone, a faculty member, Danielle Ritter, with the red face and the red sweater. Danielle was one of the architects of the revision of DevEd that we did. Every faculty member was, including, for us, a big breakthrough on our campus. Our adjuncts played just as vital a role as our tenured faculty did. And it made it comprehensive, I think, and so implementation was easy. What we did in a nutshell was we took a DevEd program that had for students testing in at the 75 level, our lowest level, 30 credits. My role was the day that it struck me, that's 30 credits for English and 30 credits for math. That's 60 credits. Our degree's 90. So low testing dev ed student would do 2/3 of a degree to get to start on a degree. I struggled with that, and then I started working with Kim Ward, my associate dean, who couldn't be here. She's struggling with that. We're humanities people, so we struggle with stuff like that. Then we started thinking about the 75 level, and we had less than 10% of our 75 students make it to college level courses. That really bothered me because the economy's tanked, jobs are hard to get in. We're in a very industrial county, one of the bigger port cities on the West Coast, and very blue collar. People were struggling, and start doing the math of that's 90-some-odd% that we're taking tuition from, knowing that we have that stat, and that stat is not hidden, it's out there, but we weren't making decisions on what to do with it. Kim, being Kim, she's so versed in the research. She starts sending me, gosh, I haven't even opened some of the emails from 2011. Still, just articles, CCRC brief, here's something from this. I'm floundering in it. Then I go to ATD and I meet Peter Adams from Baltimore College, who does
Community College of Baltimore campus.
does some great work with accelerated higher level into English 101, ALP program.
program.
Yeah, and I'm very intrigued by that. So now I'm excited. I have to say it was in Indianapolis. How many people attended Indianapolis ATD? Brutally cold. We're all stuck inside the entire time. I had attended a session, and being a dean, I can talk to anybody anytime I want. So I talked to Peter in the men's room, which the answer was great. Could we wait till we get outside for this? Because I'm just so excited. We talk outside, and he excites me more. So we get back to campus, and we decide we're going to tear it apart. And we did. We took it apart in ways that the school had not changed Dev Ed in basically 40 years, however long it had been there. And we really shook up the model. We did have to move some of the 75 students to adult basic ed. They weren't succeeding. We had to use test scores to do that. We had to redo our AccuPlacer scores. Now we've even moved further away from AccuPlacer.
Okay, we're going to get a little bit more deeply into it.
Yeah, kind of in a nutshell.
Okay, so Lucy, do you want to describe what happened at El Paso and your role in that work?
My role is, I'm a teacher. I teach mathematics, and so we did look at what they were doing at the National Center for Academic Transformation, and they have several models. The model we thought would be the Math Emporium. It self-accelerates students. There's some students that go in there and don't need to be there for 16 weeks, and so our model, which you'll hear about a little bit more later, is what we did. And my role in it was really to bring the faculty together to take a look at what we needed to do, because we have 5 campuses, what needed to be done and how could we implement something at very different campuses that had very different types of facilities. Towards the end, I was the director of the entire project because the person that was directing it went to another school, to another city. So that was my role.
And Becky?
My role in Quick Start was, initially Quick Start was a grant project. And so I was one of a 3-person team with my provost, Dr. Chad Brown, and a full-time faculty member that was appointed the project director of the Quick Start grant project. And I were a team of 3 that originally developed Quick Start in the beginning. And my major role was providing expertise and consultation on the development of the curriculum, because the developmental education coursework and the first year experience course were both under my responsibilities. So that was the role I played initially. As time evolved and personnel changed, Quick Start became a part of my academic division at the college, so it is completely within the division now.
So while you're on that note, just tell us a little bit about how your college began to address the needs, the personal and academic needs of your students, because you have a pretty diverse population.
At the time that we started Quick Start, what we had at the college was a significant percentage of non-traditional students coming in due to the recession. And so we looked at demographics, and age groups of our student population was one factor that we were considering. We have been through training for students raised in generational poverty because Zane State is located in Appalachia, so we have a high level of poverty, and 80% of our students have financial aid. And so we tried to understand the characteristics of these students and what we were working with and how we could give them a better transition into becoming a college student when they were generally older and you know, not familiar, first generation college attenders, not familiar at all with the world of academics. So how could we help them? We also have student focus groups at our college for occasionally in different times for different reasons. And so we do listen to the voices of our students as well and what they're telling us. That we also have end of course surveys that we do, and the students tell us, you know, what's good, what we could improve upon. So we listen to the students' voices as well.
Great, thanks. Lucy, the question I had prepared, I'm going to change up a little bit because at El Paso you now have actively moved Emporium to 5 campuses. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges of scaling across the campus and making this an option for the entire college? Because that, you have a large population and a diverse population.
Very
so
diverse.
what kind of challenges did you face in scaling?
We had, the major challenge was really because of the Emporium style that is completely technology, but with faculty in there. There were 2 major challenges. One is, you know, how do we change the facilities of 5 campuses? All very different. One in a very, very old building downtown, which is my campus. We bought an old bakery. The college bought an old bakery, and we made the bakery into an Emporium. At another campus that was much smaller, the dean said, well, we can probably tear that wall down and make a larger room. We did that at one campus and another one. And then at the 4th campus, we had a Department of Ed construction grant, and along with the other sciences, built the Emporium for that campus. And at the largest campus, we bought one of those portable buildings that had a lot, I don't know how many square feet anymore, but a lot of square feet to accommodate 2 huge Emporium classrooms and another technology classroom. And in that was the last one. Every time that we did this, there was a big implementation team that required faculty from each of the campuses, IT, facilities, the architects, weekly meetings with the architects. So that was a huge project, but every time that we did one, and we did start with the smallest one, we learned a little bit more. And by the time that we needed to scale, we did go to scale.
So this was really a whole college effort. I mean, really everybody had to be on board. And I also want to say that your president at the time was very resourceful.
Very, very
this
resourceful.
This is Richard Rhodes, correct?
Yes.
Very resourceful,
Yes.
and really was very intentional and focused on making sure that this happened.
He did. I mean, at one meeting, he just announced we bought the bakery across the way, and Student Services says it's too small. Do you want it for the Math Emporium? And you know, of course, we did. So it was on the implementation team. Actually, we always had somebody that was in the suite of offices of Dr. Rhodes, because if we needed something done immediately to get everything ready for 2 weeks into the that we were starting classes, that person went to Dr. Rhodes, and he really did a lot to help us with that. It was very resourceful.
Great. So David, in the approach that your college took, can you talk a little bit about how it impacted teaching and learning in terms of the curriculum redesign? I think you just have to push it over. Okay. All right, so I want you to talk a little bit about curriculum redesign and what it took. What was the lift for faculty? What were the challenges in the lift for faculty?
First off, I want to jump to the end, which we're very far from, of course, in this. That I asked the faculty to think a lot about what we're contributing to the community, what we're contributing to the college. I asked them to think a lot about legacy. And I'm an English major, and I always get Shelley's poem Ozymandias, where, you know, the days and ways of man are wiped away, and it's what we offer. And I tell them, this is our legacy. This is what we're going to leave. And the best part is, no one's going to know our names. That we've changed the way, we've increased the student success, we've changed the way this college will always approach Dev Ed after a long period of not change. And that's a motivator for us, I think. Because the faculty are wonderful, they're very humble people, they're very focused. I don't think there was a catch. I think so many of the faculty supporting it. The problem was for us, we had a very strong group that was against what we were doing. But I think a catch wasn't needed for some of our faculty. It was more of, why weren't we doing this before? And the catch, I think, if there was one, was, and this was a decision I was almost burned at the stake over, but scale was going to happen immediately.
So it was full on scale.
Yes, we did some pilot during the summer, which is very controllable, and we went to scale. We learned how to do it at scale, and a lot of growing pains there, but we grew up faster, I think, that way. Teaching and learning, I think, changed dramatically. I'm not a Dev Ed teacher. I could teach a Dev Ed class now from watching these people. They were able to adapt what they were doing to a new model, because I think that's really all it was. It appealed to things that they wanted to do that they didn't have freedom to do. We did have a very traditional approach. Our 75 levels, teachers were told that students should only write sentences, and we will work on sentence structure. Our 85 level, we'll move them up to paragraphs. And by 95, they're going to write some small papers. I had it early. What's the name of the session? Right from the start. It's appropriate because we start finding out we have a bunch of hidden teachers who are having them right from the start. I remember talking to one Dev Ed teacher who said, the chair doesn't know it, but my students are writing, my 75 students are writing research papers. They're really bad, but they're writing them. And we find out that's more and more happening that we didn't realize. And I think that was a big...
So faculty took the initiative on their own to rethink their teaching.
Yes. And then I think what the remodel did was give them the freedom to come out into the open with that, to find out they could work together on things like that. We did have to go through personnel changes, and, because we had some who did not want to adapt the model. They did not want to look at their teaching, to be honest. And that part was, of course, there were a lot of costs for us. You mentioned the support of your president and vice president. They're on the West Coast, so I can say whatever I want.
But this is being recorded.
Oh, okay. I won't use their names, but anyone below vice president level, I will gladly use names today. They stopped returning phone calls, it seemed like. This got so hot on campus that, in a way, ultimately they were left alone, the Dev Ed people, and not in a good way sometimes. I think they were left alone even by their transfer colleagues sometimes. And that's probably a little residual of Dev Ed students don't always mix well with transfer teachers, and that's a battle that I don't know about your schools, but we're still addressing that even though our success rates help. The learning part, I think it's our success. You know, I wish we could have some of our students come in. We had one of our teachers do a wonderful project that's actually being used at our professional development days now, student voices and just interviewing different students. One quick example that I think illustrates how, maybe not the specifics of learning, but we're right in the middle of different tribal lands, and student from the largest tribe is in this video. He leads off. He talks about how many times he failed English 75. He talks about how many times he failed English 85, and it adds up to 7 or 9. 9 times on those two. We do the remodel, he goes into 95, gets through 95, goes to 101, gets a B in one try. And if you talk to Calvin, not a lot changed with him. I think a lot changed with, first off, how he was accepted in the classroom. We had consultants, Dev Ed teachers from Chabot College in the greater Oakland area.
Katie Murray?
No, this was Tom DeWitt, and I can't remember Sean's last name. But they brought up this really strong, passionate social awareness as a part of the curriculum. And we had people doing that individually, but we didn't have an organized effort. That was, I think, one of the biggest teaching and learning changes for us, that became the norm across the program. And students like Calvin went from failing to succeeding, and now he's a campus leader.
Right.
You know, after that many times failing. So I think that's where the learning, at least in that one example, really changed. Statistically, it takes me a while to really understand a lot of the numbers sometimes. You know, Kim brought a lot of data-driven knowledge for us as a division. Right now, and we're still waiting for, of course, the latest numbers, we stopped looking at course completion. And a side point, it took us a while to get our research office to go along with that. We didn't care. We knew we could shape the numbers of how many completed a class. To be a bit artificial, but we wanted to know, what are our Dev Ed students from the new program doing in English 101? And in the first year, maybe a year and a half, we raised it by 8%. And it was amazing how all the resistance got quiet after that, or most of it. And Abby can...
I'm sure she can attest to that.
Yeah, she was interviewing us, and a faculty member started in on me during the interview. So there are some still outlier voices for us. I'd like to say it's spreading to even our Dev Ed math, but it's not yet. And I don't want to take away from what they do. They have a really innovative curriculum. And maybe the hours are a bit tougher for them. But I think one of the big breakthroughs for us, we mentioned the 10 and 8 hours. Now we're moving it down to 8 hours for scheduling, consistency, and we're finding out that other 2 hours with supplemental instruction for students with lower test scores, we're finding out that it's almost not necessary. So we're going to be eliminating that difference kind of thing from the classes probably by fall.
That's great, David. I wanted to move on and ask Lucy and Becky to both just talk a little bit about the adoption model framework that you used, and in hindsight now that you're past that piece, talk about what some of the challenges were and whether you might have done things differently. So, Becky?
I think in the planning stages, looking back on our work, we, should have been more conscious about involving our academic advisors in the planning stages. They have been involved. Sometimes they have been actually instructors in the Quick Start courses, and of course they play a role in advising students to enroll in Quick Start. But if we had involved them initially, I think they would have had a more in-depth understanding of the thinking that went into planning the curriculum for the course, and it would help them, sell the course to the students, because it is a pre-enrollment course. So the challenge sometimes is saying to the student, this is going to be good for you, and we're going to postpone you enrolling in the college, and they want to have their financial aid to help them with their expenses as they try to be college students. And sometimes postponing that, it takes a bit of persuasion to help them see that if they get off to a more solid beginning. And also, one of the wonderful things that has happened is through the math review and the writing review that has gone on in the Quick Start, we have accelerated some of these adult students who only needed to refresh their skills beyond developmental education, so they were able to, had they come in and take active placer right away when they first came to the college, very likely would have ended up in developmental education, and now they're able to get past that and begin at college level. And so talking to them about some of those things, it helps us to get the enrollment, but I think that was something that we could have done a better job with. Now I think we have moved into the semester system, so that's put a whole nother dynamic into trying to get students to want to enroll in Quick Start prior to starting regular college work. And so I'm going to have to, we've gotten a lot of data on the success of these students, and I'm going to have to get that in a format that a lot of folks can understand and get that message out, I think, as another persuasive tool. So I have to keep using the data and the success data in order to try to encourage the enrollment, because it has dipped since we first started.
Lucy, what were, thank you.
We had a similar situation with us. The counselors never really understood at the beginning how the emporium worked. So we found out we needed to be more purposeful about including them along every time that we met to do this, or at least a representative of the counselors. Because there were some counselors that thought that the student would be enrolled in the 3 courses, so they enrolled the student in 3 courses, not knowing that all they had to do was enroll a student in 1 course, but the student had access to all 3 courses. That was one thing. The other thing that we are now doing a much better job of after the 5th campus went on, is that sometimes students, you give them so much information at the beginning that they're overloaded, and some students did not hear clearly, this is going to be a math emporium, it's going to be taught this way, and be prepared. But if you don't want that, we still have a couple of sections for the traditional course. So we still had a lot of students enrolled, and that didn't even want to touch the computers, because we have a very diverse population of students. And so we figured out a way with IT, they've been a wonderful partner, to when the student is enrolling in the course, a little pop-up comes up and describes the Math Emporium. If you want to self-accelerate your work or whatever, if you want to work with they have their instructors, 3 hours a week and tutors, but some students just want to have that traditional lecture. We don't have a lot of that anymore. So I think being better at relaying that message to students. And the other thing is that the one thing that we did do good that we learned is that we knew that from our other work, for other interventions, that we didn't prepare the college for what we needed in terms of support, funding. And with DEI, we knew it was going to run out in 3 years, and everything had to be ready. But because we were using tutors, the tutors in the classroom, we did tell Dr. Rhodes and his cabinet, we're going to need funding for these tutors in 2 years. We're going to need that. So can you do whatever it takes to put that into the budget to sustain that? And so the college had 2 years to figure out how to find monies to get that funding, and now we have funding for tutors. Other programs, when you use funding and the funding goes away, the tutors go away and the programs don't work as well. So it was good for us to find out those things that we needed to, that were going to be sustained. Of course, all the technology is sustained because anything that the college buys, whether it's grant money or the college's money, has to be sustained every 3 years.
Yeah.
But we were worried about the personnel, the tutors that were so important.
So something I heard that you both said, that in hindsight, you said you should have brought in student services sooner.
Yes.
They should have been brought in at the front end of the
Front
planning.
end.
David, you're on with that as well?
As soon as, Becky, I'm sorry. As soon as Becky said it, yes, the memory kicked in again, and we were so frustrated at first that why aren't the advisors helping us fire?
Oh, we forgot to tell them.
We met with them, but we met with them in this whirlwind presentation, and what I think I forgot is that was maybe the third whirlwind presentation they had that week. That so much as advisors, there's so many special programs happening now, state programs. And I think we forgot how difficult their job is keeping that all straight, and so we felt one presentation, a nice handout, and more was needed. And that was our fault, I think. So we've had to rework that relationship a bit, and we took some responsibility back, so it would clear their plates off a bit, and we redid how we placed them.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So I want to open this up to, but I'm going to use this now to open it up to for questions from anybody in the audience.
But real quickly, I want to say to the camera, I did misspeak earlier. My president was very supportive from the beginning. Actually, it was her idea.
You did say that,
I'm curious, and congratulations to all of you. It sounds like you've got models that we can adapt in our respective colleges. To what extent were you, or have you used third-party proprietary products and or services? And to that end, what advice might you have as a school that might be looking to implement curriculum, service, products, those sorts of things?
I'll start. That we actually had, that was a big dilemma for us because there's so many products now, technology-wise, that you can use. But we decided that we were going to be very democratic. We brought everybody in to tell us about their product that at the time that had products. And then we in the pilot that we had, we piloted both products, and then we said, all right, which ones do we selected 2, and then we said, which ones do we now want to select? And so the democratic process didn't work there. So what we did is we said, all right, let's give it another semester. And what we did is we actually took and gave the 2 different the students that were taking each of the different products the same final. And we had been doing this before, but we didn't think about using that. We gave them the same final, and we, as a group of faculty that were teaching it at all the campuses, graded the final collectively. So maybe I had page 1 to grade, and Becky had page 2 to grade. But every page was graded by 2 different faculty, so that we could calibrate the scores, and that provided a lot of professional development. But it also gave us the clear winner, and so we did it that way. Oh well, we're using MyLabs Plus, a Pearson product. That's what for us, your populations might be very different and need other things, but that has for us the best learning resources. If you want another language, you can pop that up. It was for us the better product. I'm sorry, mathematics.
It's math.
Mathematics.
Becky, was there a particular?
Quick Start uses a Pearson product called Math Test, which does a diagnostic of their computational skills and sets up a study plan. And we used that because all of the math classes, including college level math at Zane State, use my math lab, so it's a nice introduction.
I would say our revision was so different that it actually allowed us to move away from those types of products with such a structured developmental program. We relied on those a lot. When we shifted the emphasis, it relied more on teacher creativity and student-teacher dynamics in that creativity. And in the process, we just last year closed down our support lab for Dev Ed classes, which was using Play-Doh for a long time. So it was just different for us because of the discipline, I think.
Yes, sir.
How well are your students doing as far as the transition? How well are your students doing as far as your math lab is concerned? How well are they doing on the transition piece when they go into when they go into the say the 140s, 160 math classes? You know, there's some skills gaps, and I was wondering if
So we did do some look at retention, but also completion. But the other piece that we looked at is how soon were the students that were in the Math Emporium finishing their first college level course, or the percentage of them that finished it in 2 years. Because our students were most of them finished in 4 years, you know, their college level math. So we thought that would be a good measure to look at whether or not things are working. And so the Math Emporium students are finishing their first college level course within 2 years at a higher rate than our regular students are. And the data is in your book. I think I can probably show you that. The completed college developmental math within 2 years, but then completed their first college level course is far higher in the Math Emporium courses. The second year, the rate of completion went down a little, but because the second year we had a larger, we had brought in four campuses at that time, so our population grew, but we still have far greater number of students that are completing their course sequence and then their first college level math class than the regular students, and they're coming back. Our retention rates are much higher for the Math Emporium students, and we believe, although we need to do some more qualitative research, that that's because they don't start again. When they fail a course, you come back and you start all over again for 16 weeks. Here we save Rachel talked about, they save their test. Everything that they've done, that they've completed is saved. And then when they come into class again the next semester, we just export all their grades and they start out where they finished. They may just need the last unit. So I think that's why our retention rates are much higher in the Math Emporium. Yeah, if you only look at completion, it's not a clear picture.
Yes.
The issue that you struggled with not getting advisors on board or educating, you thought you educated counselors, I would have to say that we experienced that as well with multiple programs. Well, when I was at Cuyahoga, and my colleague is here in Cleveland. So I would imagine this is an issue. I'm just inviting Achieve the Dream to consider doing something about that. You know, like offering, like if you look through the book, there really isn't anything that specifically addresses the counselor's role. I know that we have a lot of presentations on college culture, but I think that this is an area that perhaps needs to be explored more. And bringing in people who have really maybe been successful, or bringing counselors in to talk about it. I know it's a year away, but there's something that's missing, I think, and we're all struggling with it.
Yes, we will take it back to Washington. And last year, there were several, I do remember, because I was involved in one or two of them, there were several sessions specifically around dropping the, undoing silos between academic affairs and student affairs, and how you create better partnerships. Yeah, you'd be surprised a lot. We know. Yeah, but that's good information for us to get out to folks. That's a very good idea. Yes, ma'am.
How did you get adjuncts involved? Somebody up there mentioned that you got adjuncts on board. One of you mentioned that you got adjuncts on board. How did you do that?
Everything is sound. Sometimes we do, this time we don't need to be live in these. But invited the sitting department chair to retire because it was really affecting the dynamic. We had adjuncts who were encouraged to remember that their contracts were quarterly renewable. We didn't know even about the emails that adjuncts were receiving that had created sometimes a state of fear in the department. So they were very quiet, and the dynamic did change. The department chair was, on the fence anyway about retirement. And I think once just a personnel change, if my former vice president, who's now a president in Washington State, that was one of our first conversations after it just took off and was running well. He said he didn't even realize how much one shift in personnel can affect a department and trying to build a new program. And I don't mean to bash my former department chair. She gave a lot to the college. But this shift was hard for her to accept, and for the adjuncts it was just liberating. And I think faculty like Danielle, it was natural for them. So inviting adjuncts, asking them to vote on things, that they're just as active in that professional development. I don't think it was discussed anymore, Danielle, was it? It just...
No, they actually, I think, like David said, they wanted to. So we did pay them, and the retreats helped. So you have this day where you can sit and talk and look at everyone that's in your department in the face. Wow, it was exciting. And so and them getting that opportunity to talk, they wanted that. Our adjuncts are fantastic. So in so many ways, they have the best ideas. Sometimes I feel too stressed to come up with a really good idea, but they have it. So it was awesome just to sit across from them, enjoy lunch, and have a conversation. And then I would say almost all of them showed to the first retreat, and it only took one, and now every retreat, every adjunct is there. So
one thing Danielle won't add, Dev Ed teachers are a special breed. I'm a transfer person, and I'm in awe of Dev Ed teachers, and it was the way they accepted the adjuncts without even thinking that I think tore down most barriers. It was teachers in the room. It was never different levels of teachers, and I think adjuncts since that from the beginning, and it stopped being two different levels of contract. And again, I think the full-time faculty contributed that much more than they ever realized or will ever get credit for, because Dev Ed teachers don't take credit for what they do.
And what we did is we actually had professional development for everybody from the very beginning, because we knew that it was gonna, not just technology-wise, they needed to learn how the technology worked, and the beautiful resources that they have now for instructors to look at how many minutes a student spends on a particular problem even. But also professional development on the pedagogy that is needed to do something like an emporium. They're no longer the stars up there with the big chalkboards. They have to really address so many levels at a time that we invited our adjuncts, and some of the adjuncts were the first to say, I want to try it. So every time that we did anything for faculty, if you do anything for full-time faculty, you have to pay them, especially if it's a Saturday. And so, but we invited the adjuncts, and many times there was more adjuncts that were willing to go than full-time faculty. So we involved them at the very beginning. Some of them were the leaders at some campuses, and we do value what they're doing. And what we ended up doing is, once we knew that we had some powerful examples of teachers, we asked them to give professional development to everybody. And that really honors a faculty, whether they're full-time or part-time, and we did that many times.
In Quick Start, most of it is now taught by adjuncts. We have one full-time developmental math faculty that's involved with the Zanesville campus program. And we pull the group together, who are the instructors, with the coordinator and with me periodically, and we give them a voice in the curriculum and in refining the curriculum and what's working in the classroom, what's not, how can we improve this. And so we constantly work on improving the course collectively.
Realize we did 3 hires full-time senior line, and for me it was a big shift in that all 3 hires ended up being, we did national searches, came from our our adjunct faculty. And for me, I was hired from out of state, and I thought that's what we should do. There's so many unemployed English teachers in the world. By the time we do the search, the best ones are in our adjunct center just down the sidewalk, and it really changed the way I look at, I think, in the hiring process.
Okay, well, I think we're just at that time, and I want to thank everybody very much, and the panel especially. Thank you very much for all your hard work. Thank you, everybody.